My husband texted me from Las Vegas saying he had married his assistant. I didn't respond. I just blocked his card and changed the locks. But when I woke up the next morning, the police were standing at my door. My phone, sitting on the mahogany nightstand I inherited from my grandfather, buzzed loudly, a vibration that felt sharper than usual in the dim early morning darkness. The screen lit up with that harsh artificial blue glow that cuts through the dark like a headlight. Nathan Brooks. My husband was supposed to be attending a marketing conference in Las Vegas, a networking event he insisted was crucial for his career advancement. I need to make more money, he said before leaving on Thursday morning, using that line he picked up from those multi-level marketing types, the one that always made me wince a little. This conference will open so many opportunities for us. He kissed me goodbye with what looked like sincere tenderness, dragged his suitcase down the driveway, and drove off in the rental BMW I had co-signed for. I reached for my phone, squinting against the glare, still sluggish from a restless night. I assumed it would be an emergency, a lost wallet, a missed flight, or maybe a request to transfer money for some sudden expense. Nathan was impulsive with money, always had been, but I had learned to accept that flaw as part of loving him. Instead, I found a photo. The picture was grainy and slightly blurred, clearly taken with a shaky hand under the harsh neon lights of the Las Vegas Strip. In the foreground was my husband in a blue suit I had never seen before. Definitely not one of the all-black outfits hanging in his closet at home. The suit looked like something bought from a thrift store, the kind of thing someone grabs when they forget their luggage at the airport. Standing next to him, wearing a dress straight out of the 80s, was Sofia Rivera, the coworker he had mentioned many times over the past year, always insisting she was just the new assistant who helped him plan things and avoid unnecessary problems. They were holding up a piece of paper toward the camera. Even in the low light and blurry resolution, I could recognize the formal lettering and what looked like an embossed seal. A marriage certificate. Behind them, the tacky faux Gothic arches of a drive-through wedding chapel glowed with purple lights and fake flowers, looking like the punchline to a terrible joke. The text message that came with the photo followed right after. Just married Sophia. I've been with her for 8 months. Your weak energy made this too easy. Enjoy your pathetic little life. I'm finally free. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering uselessly over the glass. The timestamp glowed at the top, 3:47 a.m. For what felt like 30 seconds, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe at all. The shock hit like a physical blow, an explosion ripping my thoughts apart. My heart pounded so hard in my chest, I could feel my pulse in my temples, behind my eyes, in the tips of my fingers. And then, just as suddenly as it had hit, the shock receded like a wave pulling back from shore. What rose in its place wasn't the anger I would have expected, not tears or despair, but something entirely different, a clarity so sharp it was almost frightening. It felt like someone had flipped a switch in a dark room, flooding everything with crisp detail. My thoughts, chaotic just moments ago, arranged themselves into clean, sequential steps. He didn't just cheat on me, he gloated about it. He had an affair, then documented it, and sent the evidence straight to his legal wife with a message crafted to deliver maximum emotional damage. It was arrogance on a level that bordered on stupidity. He had handed me everything I needed to destroy him. I didn't reply. I flipped the phone face down and breathed until my chest settled. After that, I sat up, turned on the bedside lamp, and walked to the home office. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't act out any dramatic movie-style reaction. I simply got to work. The next 3 hours I spent planning, searching for evidence. Every keystroke was deliberate. Every decision was measured. Nathan had always been a chameleon, charming when he needed to be, ambitious to the point of ruthlessness, capable of manipulating people so subtly you wouldn't realize it until long after. But he had one fatal weakness that would lead to his downfall. He was financially illiterate. He treated money like oxygen, limitless, invisible, something that simply existed in the air for him to breathe whenever he needed it. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow becoming my strategic map. First was the house. I pulled up the property records I kept in a secure folder, the documents I had reviewed closely when we got married, specifically because my attorney insisted on it. I had bought the house 3 years before I ever met Nathan, at that industry networking event. It was premarital property, clearly protected by the prenup he had signed, without reading, because he was too in love with me to care about boring paperwork. I remembered that day vividly, how he brushed off my suggestion to have his own lawyer review the documents, how he signed with cheerful enthusiasm, and then suggested we go out for expensive cocktails to celebrate the upcoming wedding. Next were the financial accounts. What Nathan called our joint checking account was actually my primary checking account, one where I had simply added him as an authorized user 3 years before we got married. That distinction was crucial, and it was something he had never bothered to think about. I logged into the bank's website and navigated to account management. Remove authorized user. I clicked. Confirm removal. I clicked again. The system processed for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then, user successfully removed. The credit cards followed the same pattern. They were accounts I had opened years before I met him. He had supplementary cards, which gave him access to my accounts. Cancel card. Report lost, stolen. Remove authorized user. Click. Confirm. Click. Confirm. Click. Confirm. Everything executed with surgical precision. 1 hour after receiving the photo, he was completely cut off from every financial resource he'd relied on for the past 3 years. His personal checking account, as I had seen before on the banking app, always hovered around $50 because he burned through his paycheck on golf outfits he never used, networking lunches, and subscription services the moment the direct deposit hit every other Friday. Once it was all done, I picked up my phone and called a 24/7 locksmith service I found through a quick online search. Emergency locksmith, this is Travis. The voice on the other end was sleepy but professional, the voice of someone used to emergency calls at odd hours. Yes, I need emergency service, I said, my voice steady and completely emotionless. I need all exterior locks changed immediately, and I need the garage door access code reset. That's going to run you at least $300, plus rush fees, Travis said. I heard him waking up fully, probably pulling on pants, and searching for his keys. I'll pay you $600 if you get here within 20 minutes. There was a pause. Give me the address. I'll be there in 15. 12 minutes later, he pulled up, a broad-shouldered man with a silver-streaked beard, wearing a tucked-in polo and worn jeans. He glanced at my face, then asked nothing. He started working with a drill and key blanks, occasionally looking over at me with a sympathetic expression, like he had seen this scene more times than he wanted to admit. While Travis worked on the front door, drilling out the old lock and installing the new one, I stood in the entryway under the streetlight glow and began taking the next steps. I screenshot Nathan's messages and the wedding photo. I backed them up to 3 different cloud storage services. I sent copies to a personal email address Nathan didn't know existed. By 6 a.m., the house had become a fortress. Every electronic staircase was pulled up. Every physical gate was locked and reinforced. The keys Nathan carried in his wallet when he left for his trip were now nothing but useless bits of metal, unable to open a single lock in the home he had lived in for the last 3 years. I thanked Travis, paid him in cash, then stepped back into the deep quiet of the house. The earlier adrenaline began to drain away, replaced by a heavy exhaustion. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like a surgeon who had just amputated a gangrenous limb, but knowing with absolute certainty that it was the only way to survive. I lowered myself back into bed, just as dawn began to seep through the curtains. The new house keys sat on the nightstand, where the framed wedding photo of Nathan and me used to be. I had turned it face down before I stood up to leave the room, unable to look at his smile any longer. I closed my eyes and wondered if I was dreaming. I wasn't dreaming. I just lay there, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. I woke up at 8 a.m. to noise, hard, heavy pounding on my front door, strong enough to rattle the frame. I grabbed a robe to cover my nightgown, my body moving automatically, and checked the security camera feed on my phone before going downstairs. Two uniformed police officers stood on my porch. One looked to be in his late 50s, graying hair and the worn-out posture of someone who had dealt with too many domestic disputes over a long career. The younger one looked about 25, sharp jawline, and eyes scanning the neighborhood with the alert caution of a rookie who took everything seriously. I opened the door, keeping the mosquito screen closed between us, a small barrier, but a barrier nonetheless. "Good morning, officers," I said. "How can I help you?" The older officer adjusted his duty belt, which was hanging low on his hips from the weight of the gear. "Ma'am, we received a call about a domestic disturbance at this address. Specifically, we're investigating a report of unlawful eviction. The caller stated that you changed the locks and cut off your husband's access to money while he was out of town." "I see," I said, leaning against the doorframe with the calmness I wanted to project. I did not invite them in. "And who exactly is claiming he was unlawfully evicted?" "Your husband, Nathan Brooks," the younger officer said, glancing at a small notebook he pulled from his chest pocket. "He reported that you locked him out of the residence and canceled his credit cards without warning." "Ah," I said, nodding slowly. "Well, officers, there's one small but very important issue with that claim. He's actually not my husband anymore, at least not according to his own actions." The older officer frowned. "Ma'am, you can't just decide you're divorced and lock someone out. That's a civil matter that has to go through the court?" "No," I interrupted gently, raising a hand. "I'm sorry for the confusion. I mean, physically and legally, he's no longer my husband by his own voluntary choice. He married his mistress." I held up my phone, which I had brought downstairs specifically for this moment. I had the wedding photo opened and ready. The older officer leaned in, squinting at the screen. I watched his eyes move across the image, taking in the white dress, the certificate, and the tacky wedding chapel architecture in the background. His eyebrows shot up so high, they nearly disappeared under the brim of his hat. "Well, I'll be damned," he murmured, his tone shifting from authoritative to genuinely stunned. Is that an actual marriage certificate?" "It is," I confirmed. "And here's the message he sent with the photo." I swiped to show him the cruel text, the timestamp right there in plain view. The younger officer leaned over his partner's shoulder, and I saw the corner of his mouth twitch as he fought back a smile. "Now, about the property," I said. I swiped to another prepared screenshot on my phone. "This is the deed, showing it was purchased in 2016, under my name only. Premarital asset. My husband's name is not on it, and the prenup we signed clearly protects this property. As for the financial issue, the credit cards he mentioned are accounts under my name, and I have the right to revoke them." The two officers exchanged a long look, the kind of wordless communication that happens between coworkers who've been doing this long enough to talk without speaking. It was the look of people realizing they had been sent out based on a false report. "He also said you took some of his personal belongings," the younger officer added, though the accusation now lacked any real force or conviction. "His personal items are completely untouched inside the house," I said. "However, because he voluntarily committed an illegal marriage and ended our marital relationship through his own documented actions, I have no legal or moral obligation to grant him or his mistress access to my private property." The older officer let out a long sigh, the sound a slow leak of air from a punctured tire. He lifted the shoulder radio. "Sir?" he said into the mic. "This is Officer Patterson. We're on scene." A shrill burst of static came from the radio, followed by Nathan's voice. "Did you arrest her yet? Tell her to open the door right now. My credit cards are all declined, and I need to pay for the hotel room. This is financial abuse." Officer Patterson's jaw tightened. "Sir," he said with the weary but authoritative tone cops use when dealing with unreasonable people, "you need to contact a family law attorney. Based on the evidence we've reviewed, we cannot force your wife to let you into her home." "Her home?" Nathan's voice shot up so high, it probably startled every dog in the neighborhood. "She stole my entire life. I'm coming back there right now. We're getting my things." He hung up before the officers could respond. Patterson turned back to me, his expression a mix of professional neutrality and maybe a flicker of sympathy. "Ma'am, a few things to protect you. Don't destroy anything of his. Don't throw anything out. Don't burn anything. Don't damage anything. If he comes back with a court order or with police escort, you'll need to allow supervised collection of his personal property. That will serve you better in the long run." "I understand. Thank you, officer," I said. They returned to their patrol car, spoke briefly about something I couldn't hear, then drove off. I stood in the doorway watching them disappear, feeling a strange buzzing in my ears like mild tinnitus. The first wave had crashed against my defenses and retreated. But I knew he wouldn't stop, and he wouldn't be coming back just to retrieve belongings. He invaded like a conquering army, except this army was chaotic, emotional, and completely unprepared for the reality ahead of them. I pulled out my phone and sent an email to Nathan's HR department. I hadn't wanted to do it, but his accusations had changed my mind. At 4 p.m. that same day, a Honda Civic came barreling down my driveway with the aggressive confidence of someone who believes they still hold absolute power. It wasn't Nathan's car. His rental BMW was probably still sitting in the Las Vegas airport garage because he couldn't afford the daily parking fees. This was his mother's car, with Barbara behind the wheel. Nathan's mother, a petite woman with dyed burgundy hair that looked like her attempt to fight aging with the financial help I had unknowingly provided through expensive treatments. Nathan sat in the passenger seat. In the back were Sofia Rivera, who looked like someone who had just realized she brought a knife to a nuclear war, and Nathan's sister, Taylor, already filming with her phone before the car even stopped. They spilled out of the car in a chaotic storm of outrage and designer luggage. I was ready. I had spent the entire afternoon packing Nathan's belongings systematically, not carefully, not with any intention of preserving or organizing them. I simply gathered everything that belonged to him into heavy-duty trash bags and flattened cardboard boxes I'd pulled from the garage. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, his baffling collection of golf gear he insisted on buying, even though he didn't know how to hold a club. All of it now sat waiting in clearly labeled containers, stacked neatly in my garage. I opened the garage door as they approached the house, then stepped into the doorway with my arms crossed. "You monster!" Barbara screamed, before she was even halfway up the driveway, her voice shrill enough to shatter crystal. "How dare you! Locking your husband out, stealing his money! We're calling the police immediately!" "They were here early this morning," I said calmly, my tone even and neutral. "And they left. You're free to ask them why they didn't arrest me for any of the things he claimed." Nathan yanked off his sunglasses with theatrical flair, revealing eyes shadowed by dark circles, likely from a night spent making terrible decisions. The smugness was gone, the arrogance from the wedding photo gone too. He looked desperate and slightly panicked. "You're humiliating me!" he shouted, jabbing a finger toward me. "I tried to rent a car and my card was declined. I tried booking a hotel for tonight and that card was declined too. Sophia had to pay for gas just to drive back here. Do you know how embarrassing that is?" I looked at Sophia, who stood slightly behind Nathan, as if hoping his body would shield her from my attention. She didn't meet my eyes, staring instead at a crack in the concrete of my driveway. "Hi, Sophia," I said pleasantly, like greeting someone I recognized at a cafe. "Congratulations on your wedding. Quite the surprise. I hope HR at your company is as understanding about workplace relationships as I was about this entire situation." Sophia's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "What? What are you talking about?" "Oh, the strict no dating policy at your workplace," I said lightly. It spells out everything about romantic involvement between employees. I'm sure Janice in HR will be fascinated by the wedding photo. I sent it to her about 2 hours ago, along with the still valid marriage certificate between Nathan and me. Sophia's face drained of color so fast, I briefly worried she might faint right there in my driveway. Nathan yelled, "You didn't! You didn't do that! That's my job." "I did," I said. "Amazing, isn't it?" That's the word people like to use these days for impulsive life decisions. "This is financial abuse," Taylor suddenly shouted, stepping forward with her phone held up, as if it were a weapon or a shield. "I'm recording this. This video is going straight on Twitter, and everyone will see what a selfish, abusive person you are. You're going viral." "Go ahead and post it," I said, looking directly into her phone camera. "Make sure you use lots of hashtags. Tag me if you can find my account. I'd be more than happy to comment with proof of bigamy, the wedding photo, and the sweet message your brother sent me. I'm sure your followers will love a dramatic family scandal." Taylor's phone dipped slightly, her confidence faltering as she seemed to realize that online battles only work if you actually have power. "Where are my things?" Nathan's voice cracked, as if I had wounded him with my decisions. This act had worked on me for years. "Where is all my stuff? You must have destroyed it, right? You're so vindictive." I stepped aside and gestured toward the garage behind me, where an entire wall of cardboard boxes and thick black contractor bags was visible, all neatly stacked and clearly labeled with Nathan's name in bold black marker. "Everything's right there," I said. "Every shirt, every pair of shoes, every toiletry, the entire golf collection. You have exactly 1 hour to load everything into the car and leave my property. After that, I will shut the garage door and call the police for trespassing." "After everything we've been through," Nathan snapped, moving toward the pile of boxes with his fists clenched at his sides. "After 3 years of marriage, I loved you, and this is how you treat me over one mistake?" "You texted me at 3:47 a.m., calling me pathetic," I reminded him, my voice still steady but edged with steel. "You married your mistress. You've been sleeping with her for 8 months, and now you want to talk about what we had." They loaded the car in a mess of hostility and silence. Sophia had to haul bags and boxes into the Civic, too. Barbara muttered curses under her breath, glaring at me every few moments. Taylor kept recording in short bursts, though I noticed she always angled the camera away from the clearly labeled boxes, probably because showing proof that I had preserved Nathan's belongings would ruin the narrative she was trying to build. Nathan tried twice to get inside the house, claiming he needed to use the bathroom and double-check his things. I blocked the door both times, refusing to let him step inside my home. When the trunk was full and the back seat packed so tightly with trash bags that Sophia looked like she barely had space to sit, they finally retreated. As they drove away, I saw Nathan staring at me through the passenger side window. It wasn't hatred in his eyes. I would have recognized that. It was confusion, deep and disoriented. Throughout our marriage, he believed I was passive, safe, easy to control, and predictable. He pressed a button and expected submission, begging collapse. Instead, he activated a completely different version of me, one that had shrunk itself to stand beside him and keep this marriage alive. I closed the garage door, leaned back against the cool metal of my car, still parked in its usual place, and felt my hands begin to shake for the first time since this nightmare began. The adrenaline finally dissolved, leaving behind a trembling exhaustion and an empty space in my chest, as if something had been carved out. The next few days, Nathan launched a smear campaign on social media that even a famous content creator would have been impressed by. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. He was everywhere at once, posting long, emotional monologues painting me as controlling, abusive, manipulative, paranoid, someone who had trapped him in a loveless marriage and destroyed his spirit. He claimed he ran off to Las Vegas out of fear for his safety. He described his marriage to Sophia as a saving love, as if he were the victim of his own affair rather than the perpetrator of an 8-month, calculated cheating streak. He posted photos of himself looking devastated, sitting in a corner surrounded by beer bottles, an artsy shot, photos of the trash bags I used to pack his belongings, all carefully staged to tell the story of a man falling apart. Mutual friends started messaging me. Some were supportive because they had known Nathan long enough to recognize his patterns, but many accused, "How could you turn him into this? He says you controlled every part of his life. Don't be so jealous. Men only think about work." What actually happened? I need to hear your side. I didn't respond yet, not immediately. Instead, I called Caleb, my friend in cybersecurity, and the person who helped Nathan set up his cloud backup system about a year before he bought a new phone. "Caleb," I said quietly, "I need the message logs, everything he thinks he deleted. I know you helped him set up the cloud backup last year. You can access it. His password is still Nathan1234 because he never changes his passwords." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "I can access it," he said. "Are you sure you want to see what's in there?" "Give me everything," I said. "Every message to Sophia, every email, every deleted text. I need the full picture." By that evening, I had a 73-page PDF. It was a comprehensive record of betrayal, detailed and complete enough to feel like evidence prepared for a criminal trial. Caleb had extracted everything: deleted texts the cloud retained, emails Nathan thought he erased forever, even his search history, which included Google queries like "how to hide money from wife" and "quick divorce process." Nathan hadn't just made mistakes or cheated. He had been systematically sabotaging our marriage for over a year. The messages to Sophia went back 14 months, starting harmless but turning quickly into something calculated and cruel. October 12th. "She's so stupid. Give me 6 more months and I'll have enough saved for your dream wedding." December 24th. "Merry Christmas, baby. I hate being here with her." January 15th. "She's paying for my marketing certificate program. Total is $4,000. When I finish that, I'll pull another investment for our new company." I read all 73 pages, my jaw clenching tighter with every new revelation. Then I chose 3 specific screenshots. The confession about hiding money, showing deliberate financial exploitation. The message about boring family, showing his contempt for people who had always treated him well. And the guarantee benefit strategy, outlining his calculated plan with disturbing clarity. I posted all 3 screenshots on my Facebook timeline, without any additional explanation or personal commentary. The reaction was immediate and intense. Within an hour, the post had been shared 47 times. The comment section became a battlefield. People who had written supportive comments on Nathan's page suddenly went silent, or quietly deleted their posts. Some who had known us both for years even posted their own stories about times Nathan had lied to them or manipulated situations for his advantage. First, Nathan's father called my boss at work, a man he had never met, screaming that I was a predator and a financial abuser who needed to be fired immediately. My boss, who had already seen the Vegas wedding photo because news spreads fast in an office environment, politely informed Nathan's father that if he called again, the company's legal department would intervene regarding harassment. At 3:17 a.m. on Thursday, less than a week after the text, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the front door security camera. I opened the app, still half asleep, and suddenly found myself watching Nathan standing on my porch, wobbling drunk, trying to shove his old key into the new lock. When it didn't work, he started pounding on the door with something that looked like a rock from my garden. "Give me my money back," he shouted at the wood, slurring. "Thief, that's my inheritance money." Which was ironic, considering his father was very much alive and had recently called my boss demanding I be fired. I didn't call the police. I just saved the footage. It was more evidence for the ongoing divorce process, but the peak of absolute absurdity came 2 days later, from an unknown phone number. Even though I knew better, I still answered. "Hello? Is this the woman destroying my daughter's life?" A sharp, screechy voice snapped, dripping with hostility. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "This is Margaret Rivera, Sophia's mother. I almost laughed. In fact, I had to cover my mouth to stop the sound from escaping. Mrs. Rivera, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I assume you're calling to apologize for your daughter having an affair with a married man. My daughter made a mistake, she barked. Young girls do stupid things when they are in love. But you're an adult. You should know better. You should be the bigger person in this. You need to take your husband back. I paused, genuinely stunned by the logic. I'm sorry, your daughter is only 4 years younger than I am, so I wouldn't call her a young girl. And why exactly should I take him back? Sophia is going to leave him, Margaret said, her voice dropping into a harsh whisper, as if sharing a shameful secret. She lives with me. She owes $60,000 in student loans. Nathan, he can't support her, so you need to take him back so my daughter can get her life back together. The audacity was breathtaking. I sat there holding the phone, momentarily speechless at what I was hearing. Let me make sure I understand you correctly, Mrs. Rivera, I said slowly. You want me to reconcile with a man who committed a crime, embezzled my money for his wedding, cheated on me for 8 months, while still married to me, and spent the past week slandering me online. Also, your daughter doesn't have to face the consequences of her own affair? When you say it like that, you sound selfish, she grumbled, her tone implying I was being deliberately difficult. Marriage is about forgiveness and compromise. Teach that to your daughter, I said. Goodbye, Mrs. Rivera. I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Then I sat down in my office chair, stared at the wall, and started laughing. A slightly unhinged sort of laugh. A CT9. The divorce hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later, expedited, because fraud and marrying 2 women at the same time is something the court system takes very seriously. My lawyer, a sharp man named Richard Henderson, recommended to me by a colleague, told me from the start that this case would be straightforward. Legally, you are guaranteed to win, Henderson had said during our initial consultation. He quite literally handed us everything we need, complete with photographic evidence. I've practiced family law for 23 years, and I've never seen someone self-destruct this thoroughly. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed in my best suit, the one that made me look professional and composed. Henderson met me outside the courthouse, carrying a briefcase that I knew held the 73-page document of Nathan's messages, along with a stack of supporting files. Ready? He asked. Let's finish this today, I replied. We sat in the courtroom, a space faintly scented with floor wax, anxiety, and old coffee from the vending machine in the hallway. The air conditioning was too cold, making the room feel sterile and uncomfortable. And then the door opened. Nathan walked in wearing a wrinkled dress shirt. Barbara and Taylor flanked him like bodyguards, both glaring at me with identical hostile contempt. Sophia was noticeably absent. The judge, a stern-looking woman named Patricia Caldwell, with reading glasses perched on her nose and silver hair pulled into a neat bun, looked up from the file in front of her. Her eyes moved from the paperwork to Nathan's clothes, then to the wedding photo from Las Vegas clipped into the evidence packet. Mr. Brooks? Judge Caldwell asked, her tone indicating she was already skeptical of the documents in front of her. I see conflicting information here. You married a second woman, while already married to Mrs. Brooks for the past 3 years. Nathan's attorney quickly intervened, a nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit, who clearly hadn't expected such a case to land on his desk. We argue that the marriage in Las Vegas is invalid due to coercion and temporary incapacity from alcohol consumption. Coercion, Judge Caldwell repeated, her eyebrow raising. Someone coerced your client into traveling to Las Vegas, locating a wedding chapel, and marrying another woman? Your Honor, my client was under extreme emotional distress, the attorney pressed on, his voice tinged with desperation. He felt trapped in an abusive marriage. He was also severely intoxicated at the time of the ceremony, which raises questions about his capacity to consent. Henderson slowly rose to his feet. He didn't shout, didn't slam anything, didn't grandstand. He simply opened his briefcase, removed the stack of documents, and approached the bench. "Your Honor," Henderson said, his voice smooth as silk and sharp as a blade, "I have submitted 73 pages of correspondence between the defendant and Ms. Sofia Rivera. These messages and emails date back 14 months. They describe in detail a deliberate, calculated, and systematic plan. In the entirety of this lengthy correspondence, the defendant never expresses fear, distress, or any indication of being coerced into the affair. What they show is financial exploitation, including his own admissions of withdrawing money from accounts he had access to, and a clear plan to leave the marriage only after my client completed funding his business ambitions." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. The ticking of the wall clock was audible. Someone in the back row coughed. Nathan shifted in his seat. Barbara's face turned an alarming shade of red. Judge Caldwell flipped one page, then another. Her expression shifted from professional neutrality to something like disgust. "Sir," Judge Caldwell finally said, looking at Nathan over the rim of her glasses, "did you write, and I quote, 'I can't wait to see the look on his stupid face when he realizes I drained everything. She deserves it for being such a boring wife?'" Nathan's face went from pale to bright red in about 3 seconds. "Your Honor, that was taken out of context. I was joking." "In what context?" Judge Caldwell interrupted, her voice dry as desert sand. "Would that statement make more sense?" Nathan opened his mouth, then closed it again. No sound came out. There was simply no answer that wouldn't make things worse. The gavel slammed down, sharp and startling. Judge Caldwell declared, her voice firm and authoritative. "Divorce granted. All marital assets, including premarital property or anything protected under the prenuptial agreement executed before marriage, remain with Mrs. Brooks. The defendant is fully responsible for all remaining payments or debts and is entitled to nothing further. He was ordered to pay me $500 a month for 6 months, total $3,000. The gavel struck again, $500 a month for 6 months, a total of $3,000. That amount wouldn't even cover Nathan's car payment, let alone his rent, shopping habits, or living expenses. As we stood to leave the courtroom, I could feel Nathan staring at me. The anger radiating from him was almost tangible. Act 10. Outside the courthouse, whatever fragile sense of peace existed shattered instantly. Barbara, who had been simmering with rage throughout the entire hearing, exploded the moment we stepped onto the courthouse steps. "You ruined my son's life!" she screamed, her voice echoing against the concrete and marble. She lunged toward me, hands outstretched as if she meant to claw my eyes out. "Ma'am, please step back," Henderson warned, jumping between us with a speed that was impressive for a man in his 50s. Taylor, who had clearly watched far too much reality TV and participated in far too many online arguments, threw the large iced coffee she was holding. She threw terribly. The cup arced wide, grazing past my shoulder, and exploded against the chest of a woman walking up the courthouse steps behind us. That woman was Margaret Rivera, Sophia's mother. Apparently, she had decided to attend the hearing to support what she probably viewed as young love, or perhaps to beg the judge for leniency on her daughter's behalf. Instead, she was now covered in caramel macchiato and ice cubes. The scream that came out of Mrs. Rivera didn't even sound human. "You little—" She lunged at Taylor. Chaos erupted, purses swinging, fingers clawing, profanity filling the air. Courthouse security rushed up the steps within seconds, pulling the fighting women apart and threatening to arrest everyone involved for disorderly conduct. I stepped back, my lawyer beside me, watching the chaos unfold. And then I noticed Nathan. He wasn't jumping into the fight. He wasn't stopping anyone, wasn't stepping in to defend his mother or his sister. He just stood there, watching the chaos happen. Act 11, 6 months later. When everything had quieted down, but everything had also changed completely. I sold the house about 3 months after the divorce was finalized. It held too many memories I wanted to leave behind, too closely tied to a version of myself I no longer recognized or wanted to be. The real estate market was wild then. I sold it for $200,000 above asking to a young couple with twins who loved the backyard garden. I used part of the proceeds to buy a modern, luxurious condo downtown, closer to my office, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a doorman who screens every visitor. No one is allowed inside the lobby unless I explicitly approve it. According to credible whispers from mutual acquaintances, Nathan is living with his parents in their cramped two-bedroom apartment. Apparently, it's its own special kind of hell. Sophia didn't show up at the divorce hearing, because by then, she had already moved on. Literally. New company, new state, and she'd met someone new, a blackjack dealer named Crystal, who apparently didn't ask too many questions about her living situation or employment history. When Sophia realized Nathan was broke and I had no intention of becoming anyone's safety net, she vanished. The last I heard, through a former coworker, Sophia and Crystal got married. Both Sophia and Nathan were fired from their old company. They were escorted out of the building by security that very same day. Mrs. Rivera, in a twist that surprised absolutely no one, is now suing Nathan for emotional damage and reputational harm. She is also demanding reimbursement for the dry cleaning bill for the suit that got soaked in coffee. The lawsuit likely won't go anywhere, but it adds another layer of pressure to Nathan's already disastrous situation. And me? About 2 months ago, I started changing in the smallest of ways. Things that once felt like they weren't meant for me. A yoga mat rolled out over pale wooden floors, my hands trembling slightly as I pressed my toes into the mat, then exhaled, each breath slowly pulling me away from the noise of the past. A pot gently simmering on the stove, the scrape of a wooden spoon reminding me that sometimes caring for yourself simply means allowing yourself a good meal. A text from a close friend popping up, saying only, "Coffee today?" And me replying, "Yeah, 3 p.m. Bring your smile, without asking anyone for permission, without feeling guilty. Friendships became new anchors. Their laughter, the way someone rested a hand on my shoulder as I retold a chaotic chapter, the way their eyes saw me as someone reclaiming her right to exist, not as someone meant to endure. We walked through brightly lit streets together. I traveled, not to escape, but to open windows, one-way plane tickets to places I used to glance at on maps, folding clothes into a suitcase, placing my passport on the table, and lifting my head to the view outside my new apartment. The floor-to-ceiling glass reflecting a woman calmly arranging her life the way she wants it. At one airport, when Nathan tried to find my contact information, the building where I lived, with its strict security system, stopped him right at the reception desk. A cold stare from the guard, a silent shake of the head, and he understood that the boundary was no longer just words. I realized, slowly, like morning light filtering through a window, that I had let his family dim my light for years, their words settling on me like thin layers of dust over glass, blurring my view, making me see myself only through their lens. Now I wipe that glass clean, piece by piece, with small habits, with friends, with legal clarity, with mornings spent on yoga, and dinners I cook just to savor my own flavors. There was no grand celebration, only quiet afternoons, when I sat down and let a warm sense of peace spread through my chest like heated water. I thought about the 73 pages of messages detailing how he planned to use me and discard me. I thought about the 8 months of lies. I thought about the early morning text calling me pathetic, telling me to enjoy my small, sad life. He played stupid games. And he got exactly the prize those games deserve. The only thing I regret is not recognizing the red flags sooner, like on the day we first got married, when he told me his ex-girlfriend was crazy and controlling because she changed the Netflix password after he went to dinner with a client. I should have realized then that I was looking at my own future. But now I understand. I learned the lesson, and that lesson was worth every dollar of legal fees, every sleepless hour, every painful moment of those first few weeks. If you're listening to this, remember that healing is not going back to who you were. Healing is moving forward, not rushed, but determined. Choosing yourself again and again through small, intentional actions. If my story resonates with you, hit follow. Here, I talk about people who stayed silent too long and those who finally speak through action.